Thank you for joining us for the CASFA training. We do have Sophie Vogel here with us, who's going to share all of her expertise on the CASFA application now that we are live into the new year and supporting students. If you have any questions, we invite you to please enter them into the chat, and we will be monitoring those questions and answering them as we go. And without further ado, Sophie, I will pass it on over to you.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I'm so pleased that DSF invited me to present some CASFA highlights. I'm going to focus on new aid year 24-25 CASFA highlights. Just for clarification, the CASFA is aligned with the FAFSA in that the 23-24 aid year is still open for students who are going to be in school for spring semester. If you have specific questions about that, please reach out. So I just want to make sure everyone knows the 24-25 CASFA opened December 31st, 2023. So during today's presentation, I'm going to review some CASFA 2024-25 highlights, specific tips and tricks for document or form completion, and common troubleshooting issues. Today's presentation is not a CASFA walkthrough with screenshots of the entire form. Natasha will make a CASFA walkthrough presentation available to you, and there's a December 13th video at the link below, and that actually is a CASFA walkthrough as well, so you can always view that. And then for clarification, we'll have a 15-minute question and answer section at the end of my presentation. Next slide, please. So 2024-25 CASFA changes that are the same as the 24-25 FAFSA. So something that is the same is the provisional independent student status. So this is new. And as you know, students with unusual circumstances can submit a CASFA potentially without parent information if they are, like I said, a provisionally independent student. And then it is the financial aid's responsibility, the financial aid office's responsibility to follow up with that student for documentation. Another item is the student aid index. CASFA is going to be using the student aid index and not EFC. So that is aligned with the FAFSA changes. Another commonality is that siblings in college are no longer a factor in SAI. Same is true with the FAFSA, same is true with the CASFA. Also, for the CASFA, up to 20 colleges can be selected, just like the FAFSA. Next slide, please. Change 2024-25 FAFSA changes that do not apply to CASFA. So the direct data exchange is bringing over federal tax information on FAFSA and not on CASFA. So this is pretty important. Please make sure that your families know that the CASFA will still be doing manual income information entry. So families who are completing a CASFA will need to bring their 2022 tax information. If they file taxes, they will need for students and parents. Another difference between the new CASFA and the new FAFSA is that the CASFA continues to use the language parents. The CASFA currently is not using the language contributors. So student spouse and parent spouse information is still required and uses language such as student spouse and parent spouse. Next slide, please. For CASFA eligibility, just to make sure you all are aware, the CASFA is the Colorado application for state financial aid, and it is the state financial aid application for undocumented Colorado asset students. A student should complete a CASFA if they are not a U.S. citizen, legal permanent resident, or eligible non-citizen. If they qualify for Colorado asset because they have attended a Colorado high school for at least 1 year immediately before graduation or completed a high school equivalency examination in Colorado, and they have continuous and physical presence in Colorado for 12 months before the start of the semester, they may be eligible for the Colorado student grant because they are an asset student. And the financial aid office would potentially, based on their need, award them the Colorado student grant. Students should still complete a CASFA if they have financial need, regardless of their Colorado asset eligibility. So again, if they are not Colorado asset eligible, they may be eligible for institutional aid, it may help them with scholarship eligibility, etc. So students should still complete a CASFA if they are not a U.S. citizen, legal permanent resident, or eligible non-citizen. The link below is to the FAFSA page about eligible non-citizens, and we will go over that in a minute. That just recently changed last year. Next slide, please. So I'm going to show you some important highlights of the CASFA. So to find the CASFA form, please visit the website above. And then when you are there, you can click apply here. If you see on the red arrow. Next slide, please. When you are a new CASFA applicant, you will click the lowest link that says sign up. Don't have an account, sign up. Obviously, if a student has already completed a CASFA or started a CASFA, they're going to sign into their account. Next slide, please. When you are signing up for an account, registration eligibility is the first thing you will see. This comes directly from the website I mentioned, the FAFSA website, who is eligible to complete a FAFSA. And like I said, this was updated last month. So here is information in English and Spanish about who an eligible non-citizen is. The question in English is, are you a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen as described above? Your student is going to select no. And then continue. If your student selects yes, the smart form will say you are not eligible to complete a CASFA. You should complete a FAFSA instead. So please continue. Next slide. This is the account creation for students. Students are going to put in a personal email address, not a school email address, and they're going to confirm their email address. And then, of course, a password and another, confirm their password and reCAPTCHA and press continue. Then step 2 of the process is email authentication. So you need to validate your email. So you go to your email inbox. Next slide, please. Go to your email inbox, open your email. Your email may be in the spam. I'll review that again, but please remind students and families to check their spam box and click the hyperlink. Then the hyperlink takes you to a website that says, thank you for validating your account. Select continue. So you select continue. Next slide, please. Then you sign into your account. So you sign in with the email that you placed and the password, and then you click sign in. Next slide. Step 3 of student account validation is your name. So you need to use your full legal name, first name and last name. Students can leave the Social Security and ITIN number blank if they do not have that. And then, of course, date of birth, and then click done. When a student has a CASFA account, they are going to see this as the dashboard. They can select documents on the left-hand side or below, and they're going to click on 80 or 2425 and click needed. Next slide, please. Next, students are going to start their 24-25 aid year application. We call it a form or a document. Go ahead. Next slide, please. Here is student identity information. Again, the student needs to use their full legal first name and last name. It asks for the date of birth, and they can leave the Social Security number or ITIN blank if they do not have them. It is important to mention we have an exit in the upper right-hand corner below the profile. If it currently says exit, soon it will say save and exit. It is the save function. So please make sure you and your students and families recognize we have a save function on our CASFA. Next slide, please. So I'm skipping around because we're not actually going to do a walkthrough. So as you can see in the menu, we were on student information, and I've skipped all the way down to parent information. It's towards the left-hand side where there's checks for completed areas and little clock icons with an arrow for incomplete areas. So I skipped all the way down to parent information. It's very important that you enter parent's first name, parent's last name, parent's date of birth. If the parent doesn't have a Social Security number or ITIN, you can leave that. You need to enter 9 zeros. So just like you see here, it's really important that you enter all this information correctly because this screen is linked to the parent e-sign function. Next slide, please. So now we're getting to additional questions. As you can see in the menu, there are mostly checks. And so this student whose name is Ray certifies that by the time I begin college, I will have met the conditions above, and they click the I certify, check the box, and then they click next. So next slide, please. So this is how student e-signs, and this is the same for students and parents, the e-sign function. I am reviewing it because this is where some of the challenges sometimes arrive. So student selects e-sign document. Please note, you may not select another option. We do not have a process to receive and process and use a wet signature. So e-sign only. Thank you. Next slide, please. And then it says, please click on the download icon next to the document name to view the completed form. That is in fact required where the red arrow is. You will not be able to click the box that says I acknowledge and hit next until you have downloaded that form. So please download where the red arrow shows that icon, and then click the box to say I acknowledge and click next. Next slide, please. Then the student puts in their first name, as they put in before, their last name, and then the password they used when they created their CASFA account, and they click sign. Next slide, please. So this here, you can see the student, Ray, you can see their account in the upper right-hand corner. They have satisfied their CASFA, and so now they can request parent signature. So they click review and update. Next slide, please. And then they click request parent signature review. Next slide, please. Ray's parent named Sam has that email address. So Sam is going to be the one signing. They entered the email address into the application, and then they enter it again right here or verify that it's correct, and then press send invitation. Next slide, please. So the parent goes to their email and they open the email invitation, which could potentially be in their spam, and they click on the hyperlink to create an account. The hyperlink is the same for create an account or log into your account, so the parent won't encounter an issue by accidentally clicking the wrong link. Next slide, please. So for parents, step one is account creation, the same as the student. The parent is going to put in a personal email address and confirm an email address, put in a password, confirm a password, and do reCAPTCHA, and then click continue. The parent is going to get a pop-up that says, please validate your email. And so next slide, please. The parent is going to go back to their email inbox, open the email invitation, click on the hyperlink. The hyperlink takes them to a website that says, thank you for validating your account. Please select continue. So you select continue. Next slide, please. And then the parent is going to sign in. So the parent puts their email address and their password, and they click sign in. And then the step 3 is the parent account validation. So important, and I underlined it here. Complete the following registration form using your name as it is listed in the email invitation you received. So please make sure that the families look at the email invitation they received and have the name match. So you do first name, last name, identification number, or all zeros, and then date of birth. Click done, and next slide, please. Then we are at a section where it says welcome parents. So welcome parents is on the left-hand side underneath CASFA application status. Really important that when parents have an account that they confirm that they are in a parent account. One of the most common errors is parents creating student accounts inadvertently. So this is a parent. Sam has created a parent account for themselves. And so Sam is going in for the document that says pending parent signature. Sam clicks review and update. Next slide, please. Sam is going to click sign form. Sam is not going to click start, edit, or complete a form. Just like how the FAFSA will also allow a parent to go to college and apply for aid. That is why that function is here on the CASFA. If your parent is not applying for CASFA funding, they are going to definitely click sign form. Please do not click start, edit, or complete a form unless you are a college student intending to use the Colorado Student Grant. Next slide, please. The parent is then given the opportunity to e-sign the document exactly like the student was. So they are going to select e-sign. Next slide, please. They are going to download their application at the red arrow, click that icon, and then verify that everything is correct, that their child Ray entered all of the information correctly. They click the box that says I acknowledge, and then click next. Next slide, please. Sam, the parent, is going to sign using their first name and their last name and their password that they used when they created the account, and then they click sign as well. Next slide, please. And so this is what the parent sees. Above in the status section, it says satisfied. And then for the CASFA application status, it says welcome parents. So again, when you are supporting your parents and families, you can help them make sure that they are clear whose account they are in. So next slide, please. Logging back into Ray's account, as you can see by the red arrow on the right-hand side, for the 24-25 aid year, Ray, two things that are important to note. One is on their in their documents in their portal, they can see their student aid index. So Ray's student aid index is -447. And Ray can click the download icon, the bottom one. Each document that is available to download there is one of the documents that was created. However, the bottom one is the most recent one. So since Ray's parent Sam signed, we're going to click the bottom icon to see the most recent CASFA. Next slide, please. The PDF that downloads talks about the CASFA student summary. And so Ray has all of their information here. Next slide, please. And if you can see here, this is the very bottom or the very end of the CASFA student summary. Again, there's their student aid index. There, you can also see information about how Ray electronically signed and when, and how Sam electronically signed and when. Next slide, please. So this is tips and tricks for 24-25 CASFA. So important information. Students can edit their documents once the status is satisfied. So if you see here, Ray has a 24-25 document that has a green satisfied, so they can click review and update. Next slide, please. And then they can click edit completed form. Next slide, please. And then they are able to edit and make a change. For example, students can edit their document to add or delete a college, and then the student is required to electronically e-sign again, while the parent is not required to e-sign again. The parent is required to e-sign again if there are changes to the parent information. However, the parent is not always required to e-sign again, specifically if student is adding or deleting a college. Another tip and trick, which I already mentioned, is students and parents must e-sign the CASFA. There is no paper version. So please help your students and families focus on e-signing. Another is that students can save their process on the CASFA by using the exit button. So the save function will soon say save and exit. Next slide, please. So troubleshooting tips. So I want to make sure I stress with the importance of accuracy with names, dates of births, email addresses, etc. So students should use their full legal name to create their CASFA account and complete individual aid year forms and documents. Just to point it out, students can type their name correctly in one spot and then type it incorrectly in another spot, and that could create an issue. So please encourage students and families to use their correct name and the same name throughout and check that. So they should use extreme care to enter their personal information correctly the first times. And then students without a social security number can leave the field blank. For creating an account, students should use their personal email to ensure they have continued access to their CASFA. And students cannot make changes to their user profile once the account has been created. So that is why it's extremely important to make sure that students use the accurate information the first time. And account validation emails, messages may end up in spam folders. Please encourage students and families to check there. And then also ensure applicant enters parent information accurately, so parents without a social security number can enter those 9 zeros. Next slide, please. So there is a menu that I referred to along the left-hand side of the form document, and that can be used to determine which sections are complete and which sections need to be completed. Also note that skip logic technology generates information based on applicant responses. So those students who are independent students, they're not going to have those sections about parent information and parent financial information based on their answers to the skip logic questions. So if you're working with a dependent student and they say, I'm done with the CASFA, do you want to check? Or maybe that's your process. If they're a dependent student and you don't see the parent sections in the menu, you know that they didn't complete them. So that means that they inadvertently told the CASFA that they are an independent student. So then you're going to want to go back to probably student circumstances and student family information and help them answer the questions in a way that accurately determines they are a dependent student. Next slide, please. So I wanted to note, most of the inquiries I receive about CASFA problems revolve around the parent signature process. Please support your students and families in following the instructions on the CASFA portal and form document. So the parent email invitation may end up in the spam folder, and please encourage families to check there. Again, I think that before, I'm trying to be tactful, before encouraging a student and a family to just re-enter the information again and again and again, I would urge you to check to see, is there something going on? Is there somewhere where someone has inaccurate information? Because sometimes students send 10 email invites, which you can do in the system, but isn't necessary and is not a good use of time and could potentially be frustrating. So please encourage your students and families to maybe try to send 1 or potentially 2 email invites to their parents as opposed to more than that. Okay, next slide, please. So if the parent clicks the link in their email that I just showed you on the prior tab and the CASFA takes them to this sign-in page, that means this parent's email address is already linked to a CASFA account. And clearly, hopefully to a parent account and not inadvertently to a student account. I recognize that the system does not say that. The system does not say, we're not going to have you create an account because linked to this email, an account already exists. However, that is what the system is indirectly saying by allowing you to sign in. So for a parent, they can enter the email and password and click sign in if the parent knows their credentials. If the parent doesn't know their credentials, they can click reset the password and use the email address from the parent email invitation. So that is another way to troubleshoot if your student and family is encountering difficulties in this area. Next slide, please. So I do want to make sure that you all are aware of our websites for CASFA, also for students in our post-secondary education programs and services. The second bullet under websites, we have a lot of really good information. Specifically, I do want to point out that there will be a Denver FAFSA CASFA completion block party. It's on February 17th. It's going to be at the CU Denver Wellness Center, and we'll have a lot more information on our website soon. So I had the pleasure of working for DSF prior, so I recognize that DSF has a lot of systems in place for completing FAFSA CASFA. However, in addition, your students and families are invited to the FAFSA CASFA completion block party, and check it out on our website. Here's my email. You can also email me at casfa@dhe.state.co.us. That email is particularly useful because it stays with the position. So if I ever leave this position, there will be a record of the communication with the other CASFA coordinator. Next slide, please. So I'm ready for questions. What do you have?
Thank you. So our first question is the application case sensitive, especially if a student has names that are hyphened or capitalized in different letters?
No, the application is not case sensitive. Thank you for asking.
Sophie, hopefully you can hear me from here in the room at MindSpark. I invite everybody here, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and I'll repeat them so that Sophie and the folks online can hear them. Ismail, and then Leslie. Yes. Sophie, this is a clarifying question. You mentioned that students should leave the SSN, ITIN, DACA field blank if they don't have one of those. But then you also talked about parents entering zeros. Do you mind just clarifying the differences there, if there are differences?
Great question. Thank you so much, Ismail. Yes, that is exactly correct. So basically the CASFA is following previous FAFSA information. So prior in FAFSA, students without a social security were leaving it blank, and parents without a social security number were entering 9 zeros. That information continues on to the CASFA. For clarification, I am sure many of you know there is no such thing as a DACA number. That is not accurate information on our CASFA. So because there is no such thing as a DACA number, students who have DACA and have applied for employment authorization document and then have applied for a social security number can enter their social security number. However, there is no DACA number. Please let me know if you have any more questions about that.
Sophie, I do have a follow-up question to that. If the student has an ITIN, they should still leave it blank?
I believe that if the student has an ITIN, it would be great for them to enter it. It is a little bit complex because sometimes the college or university doesn't use their ITIN. However, yes, if they have an ITIN, that would be great. I was looking at a report yesterday and there were 3 students who entered ITINs 999999999, maybe one more 9. So if the student doesn't have an ITIN or isn't able to find that number, I would rather them not enter all 9s. Thank you.
Thank you. And Leslie, I think you had a question.
Is going to a university and maybe they're from a different state that they're undocumented. Obviously, they wouldn't be able to fill out CASFA because they're not like a Colorado resident yet, but that where would they be classified? Like if they classified as a Colorado, they then be able to apply for CASFA or no?
Sophie, the question is, and Leslie, please correct me if I don't capture this the way you intended. So the question is, if a student is maybe coming from out of state to go to college in Colorado, so they don't meet the requirements for in-state tuition and state aid yet, should they wait a year and then complete the CASFA, or should they complete the CASFA as they are coming in from out of state, even though they're not going to qualify for asset?
Thank you. Terrific question. And it is quite common, this question. We receive it from IHEs, institutions of higher education. So that's a very common question. I would recommend, yes, complete a CASFA. One reason to potentially not complete a CASFA would be if you spoke directly to your financial aid office at your college or university, and they said, there's no institutional aid that you're going to be eligible for. This is not going to help with scholarship eligibility. But oftentimes we recommend students complete a CASFA, even if they're not asset eligible, even if there's no way they're going to be awarded the Colorado student grant. If they demonstrate financial need using the CASFA, they could potentially be awarded institutional aid from the college or university itself, or it could potentially help with scholarship eligibility. The CASFA is the best way for the financial aid office to get a snapshot of the student's financial need.
I'm going to just check with Alma. Alma, do we have any more questions from our Zoom participants? We have some more in the room.
Yes, we have a question.
Okay.
Do we have a timeline when students will receive financial aid packages from colleges? Historically, CASFA students have had a delay in receiving their award letters.
Thank you. Terrific question. That is going to be determined by financial aid offices. It is an interesting situation right now in January 2024. There is potentially a reason to support students in completing a CASFA now immediately, because maybe a college who doesn't have a FAFSA ICERs yet for next aid year, maybe they will be able to process and award aid sooner based on the delay from FAFSA. However, it's up to every financial aid office how they do things. And we do, of course, recommend that you can always contact me and we can work with the financial aid office if you are overly concerned about a delay.
I have a couple questions here in the room, if Alma, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
Okay. Justin. Question about edits. The question is, if a student makes edits to their CASFA after they reach the satisfied status, will that create a new application, which apparently has happened in the past?
Thank you for that question. That will create a new ICER. And the ICER is the document that we share with the institutions of higher education. So their first satisfied CASFA has a specific transaction number. It happens to be number 50. And so if they edit and then they re-sign, then they will have a new ICER, which is a new file, and that will be a transaction number 51. So no, it's not a new document, but it is a new file that we then share with the institutions of higher education. I did see a question in the chat. I don't know if you all mind. CASFA is a state of Colorado application. So we share CASFA information with public universities in the state of Colorado. So that is the list of Colorado universities that receive them. We do not share CASFAs with private universities. However, a student could complete a CASFA, use their CASFA submission summary, the PDF, and take that and show that to their financial aid office at a private university. And maybe the private university would say, great, thanks for showing us your snapshot of your financial need. We can use this. So that is a potential option for a student.
Any other questions on Zoom? We do have at least one here in the room.
Do we know how long that email invite is good for? So let's say a student completes that, sends that invitation is sent to the parent. How long is that link live for?
Terrific question. Thank you very much. That link is live for 72 hours. After 72 hours, if you click the link in the email, it will take you to a website that says it's expired. So the student needs to re-log into their CASFA account, select their document, invite their parents to sign, and then their parent needs to check their email within 72 hours. So great question. And the answer is 72 hours.
Jocelyn, do you have another question or follow-up? Technical question for you, Sophie. In previous years, we received advice that if the student and the parent were using the same device to sign, that the student would need to be sure to log out of their CASFA account and close their browser window, then reopen a browser before the parent attempts to log in. Is that still the recommended practice or the option that will be most successful for families?
Great question. No, not necessarily. I don't see any harm in ever making sure a student logs out properly. However, when I make a test student account and a test parent account, and I use the same browser and different tabs, when I log into the parent account, I'm automatically logged out of the student account. So it doesn't actually take me to the login page until I try to do something in the student account. And then it takes me to the login page or says it's expired or something. So no, that is not currently an issue anymore. And I think best practices is probably always to log out of an account that's not in use. Because, I don't always do it, but if I have an issue, I'm certainly going to log out of the student account, log out of the parent account, and then log back into one. Great question. Thanks.
All right, we have a few more here in the room and just want to make sure that we're doing okay on Zoom folks as well.
So we just have a follow-up question on the CASFA.
Okay.
Can students apply CASFA aid to out-of-state colleges? And do we have a list of universities that don't accept CASFA?
Great. Thank you. So, the list of universities that don't accept CASFA is the private universities in the state of Colorado. Public universities in the state of Colorado, we do share CASFA information with their financial aid offices. So that is not a list. However, I could go on the DSF website and quickly, look, because I know you all have it by public and private. In addition, so students, if they're going to a private university in the state of Colorado or outside of the state of Colorado, especially if that university or college doesn't have a financial aid application for undocumented students, students can print their CASFA submission summary and take it to a university in Wyoming or a university in Regis, wherever, and say, hey, if since you don't have, or I don't know if Regis has a specific application for undocumented students. However, in general, they can take that CASFA submission summary and say, this is my financial situation. This is a snapshot of my financial need. And colleges and universities may potentially accept that. I would always recommend that students check with a financial aid office first.
We don't have any more questions in the chat at this moment.
Okay, we have a couple here in the room. Sophie, I just want to affirm what you just said, which is I would really recommend to a student who is undocumented and applying to an out-of-state college to check with that college before sending them their CASFA PDF, because chances are that college either doesn't award aid to undocumented students, or most likely they have their own process. So rather than creating another to-do item for students that may not actually benefit them, I would just start by checking with those out-of-state colleges to see what their process is. And I think we have 2 questions here in the room, Alyssa and Emily. Any other questions here? Oh, okay. So we have 3 questions in the room, and I think then we are going to wrap up for the day, if that seems okay to everybody on Zoom. If you are on Zoom and you have a question that you haven't asked yet, please go ahead and type that up so that we can make sure Sophie shares her answers. And Alyssa, we'll go to you.
Page, will the CASFA delete?
Sophie, the question is there a process similar to FAFSA where if there's no activity on the FAFSA for 45 days, the parent hasn't taken action to complete their portion, that the CASFA will be deleted or erased?
Great question. The answer is no.
Emily?
Risk of the other financial aid offices in schools.
Sophie, this question is about whether students need to complete their admissions application to any colleges they're considering before listing those colleges on their CASFA. In the past.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The sharing of the CASFA information, like I mentioned, it's called an ICER file. That sharing happens, and then the college has access to basically the CASFA file. And if the student applies to and is accepted at their school, then I believe their financial aid office will go to look at their CASFA and then potentially award them aid based on their CASFA. So there is no reason why you couldn't complete and submit your CASFA first and then apply and get accepted to your college second, because the financial aid office, if you have not applied to and been accepted to a college, the financial aid office is not going to review your CASFA information and award aid to a student who is not a student yet.
Thank you. And Smiley.
So
in the next school, there's a bell ring. So. Yeah, we're gonna be 7,000. It's just
This question is about what kind of aid students will qualify based on their SAI after completing the CASFA. So the question is essentially, if will the student be eligible for aid beyond the Colorado Student Grant based on their CASFA completion? Or is that something that is dependent on institutional aid once we're talking about beyond the CSG?
Great question. And it is dependent on the financial aid office. So institutions here in Colorado are allowed to have their own financial aid processes and procedures. So one student at one college or university could apply and be accepted and submit their CASFA and be awarded one amount of Colorado student grant, and that same student could potentially be awarded a different amount of Colorado student grant at another institution, because the institutions are able to award based on their own individual policies. But specifically for that question, I think, I guess I lost it. What was that question?
I think you answered it. So I think to sum up, if I'm understanding you correctly, and please correct me if this is not right, unlike with FAFSA, where there's an automatic relationship between the student's SAI and the amount of Pell that they might qualify for, with CASFA and the student's CASFA SAI, what they will qualify for is up to the college, each college to determine.
Right, absolutely, Natasha, thank you. And beyond the Colorado student grant, any other institution, any other aid, not state aid, because this is Colorado student grant is clearly state aid, any other aid that the student may be eligible for is going to be determined by the institution.
Smiley, did that answer the question? Okay, great. All right, well, I think we have come to the, oh, sorry, we've got one more. Sophie, the question is, and understand if this is not something that you can answer, but the question is, what institutions in the state tend to award the most aid to undocumented students?
Great question. I am meeting with a few Auraria campuses, I think soon, so I would have more information. You could email me about it next week. I'm inclined to say I think Metro. I think MSU Denver is. Oh,
the room agrees with you, Sophie.
Right. So I'm looking forward to getting some information back from CASFA applicants about their financial aid awards, and then we can do some analysis. I think that would be great information to have. I don't think we have an official, I don't think we have official information yet. I think that's just sort of word on the CASFA street.
All right. Well, Sophie, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. We are really grateful to benefit from your knowledge, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate with you. And huge shout out to Cindy and Alma for jumping in to manage the Zoom today and for rescuing me. And thank you to everyone who joined us on Zoom, as well as everybody in the room. We are going to say goodbye to Sophie and our folks on Zoom today, and then we have just a few more minutes here for those who are in the room. Thank you very much, Sophie, Cindy, and Alma.